ever brought your magic to Walt Disney World like, hey, we came to play? Did you tip your tiara to a Creole princess or get goofy officially? Step up like a boss and save the day? Or see what life's like under the tree of life? Did you? If you could. Would you? When we come through, it's true magic. 'Cause we came to play. Bring the magic at Walt Disney World Resort.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it. Between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
Today is the day you will lose fat. Come see Dr. T at NJ Diet.
Easiest diet I've ever done. It's changed my life. Come see Dr. T.
Using blood work and DNA testing. 1-855-5NJ-DIET and NJDiet.com. Change your life in only 40 days with NJ Diet. OG.
Make some noise!
He's the host of the Netflix series Hip Hop Evolution. He's an MC who I didn't know much about prior to this, but I'm glad I know about him. I feel each of his albums are hip hop quotables. He just released his newest album, a short story about a war. He's Shad, and I want to welcome him to the Library of Domenico. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Cool. I want to start with a question that I heard you ask in the trailer for season 2 of Hip Hop Evolution. And that question was, what was your first taste of hip hop?
My first taste of hip hop was probably a Canadian artist that you guys may or may not know. He goes by Maestro Fresh West.
I've interviewed him. Yes. Yeah. He's great.
Yeah, Maestro. He is great. Great guy, great artist. And in Canada, he's our godfather, like 100%. So he had some big hits when I was just a little kid, maybe 6, 7 years old. So those are my earliest memories of hip hop. He had one hit song called Let Your Backbone Slide that was like a massive hit in Canada. And a huge anomaly in that sense, because if you listen to the song, it is like hip hop. It's very hip hop. It's not Ice Ice Baby. It's like Big Daddy Kane sounding, Rakim sounding, like hard raps, hard drums, and it was a huge hit. So that's probably my first taste of hip hop.
Would you say that he has had the kind of the biggest impact on you as an artist, or is that someone else?
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's had the biggest impact of anyone, but definitely that initial impact of just seeing an artist, a hit rap song like really has a hip hop energy and to come into my life. And then in other ways too, he was, coming to learn that he's a Canadian artist, and the way that he represented the kind of Black Canadian experience in his music was influential for sure. But yeah, I wouldn't say he's like the top of my list of influences, just because I encountered his music way younger. I would say the artists that I heard in high school were more influential.
With those Canadian artists as well, or is that?
No, I would probably point to like the first instances of hearing Common, Lauryn Hill, Outkast. Those would be, the most formative like musical experiences of my life in terms of impact on my career.
The Netflix series Hip Hop Evolution not just takes the viewer through a journey of hip hop, it obviously takes yourself through your own journey of hip hop. So for you, what has been kind of the most surprising, I guess, story that you heard, something that you might have had a pre-notion about but could have been totally wrong?
Yeah.
Or like what has stood out for you?
Well, there's a guy in the first season, DJ Hollywood, that I didn't know about, and I actually think a lot of hip hop heads maybe didn't know about, who was just the biggest DJ in New York at a certain time in the 70s, and pioneering in terms of rap, like what we understand as rap. He's like a pioneer, and that was news to me. I didn't know about that. You know, he was from Harlem, and what the story that we often hear is about the Bronx, and of course, rightfully so. That was new to me. Trying to think of other things. I mean, a lot of the other learning too is it's a different kind of learning for me. It's like more the physical, visceral learning of being in a place, right? Being in the Bronx and feeling the energy of that place and the mix of cultures that produced hip hop, and actually having contact with it and kind of getting to know it on that level has been a big part of what I've learned too.
In the trailer for season 2, Q-Tip talks about Nas, and obviously Nas, Illmatic. I mean, what more can you say, right? One thing Q-Tip says in the trailer, he says Nas was, in a sense, true, quote unquote, true hip hop. What is the definition of true hip hop in this sense?
Yeah, I think I know what he means. You know, part of the reason why Illmatic is held in such high regard, I think, is because it's still, in the minds of music fans and hip hop heads, that is essentially hip hop. You know, this young, gritty, wise poet and beats that are grimy and soulful. That's essentially hip hop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So I think that's kind of like what he means. And I do think that remains like the essential elements of, you know, what you would call hip hop are those things.
There's something that happens and I should have wrote this question down, but there's something that happens during your interview in the Grandmaster Caz episode, the Underground to the Mainstream episode, where they talk about the famous battle. But then they talk about, and then there's a Rodney Dangerfield rapping, right? And the idea being that rap became easy for people. You fast forward today, it's the most successful genre now, most popular genre.
Yeah.
You have, you know, YouTube stars, you have SoundCloud producers, et cetera, et cetera. Is rapping just as easy now as it was when the Rodney Dangerfield dropped an album? I mean, does it feel that way?
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but in a sense, yes. You know, in the sense that there was a time, you know, as hip hop was developing and artists were expanding the boundaries of the genre and developing and like making the genre more sophisticated and more elevated, where like you had to be great to be involved. People listened for greatness of a certain kind, and now that's not what people listen for. It's not what a lot of people listen for. So in a sense, yeah, because rap is essentially easy.
Right.
Like, it is essentially easy. To be great at it is hard. But it is essentially easy. And there's something nice about that in the sense that like it means that anyone can use it to express themselves.
Right.
Theoretically, you know, if you have rhythm, which every human being is supposed to have, and, you know, language, which most human beings have too, you should be able to do it. But yeah, to be great at it is hard. And there was a time, especially as like the genre developed, probably like in the 90s or whatever, like you had to be great. I mean, the standard, you know, we brought up Illmatic. Illmatic raised the bar. You had to approach that level of rapping. Rappers before that were like, well, I have to get way better.
Right.
You know, and the same thing happened with Rakim. It's like we interviewed DMC about Rakim, and I said, what did you think when you heard Rakim? He's like, I knew we were done. You know, like that's how the genre evolved. But then at a certain point, I think you reach a creative apex. It's like, can you rap better than Black Thought? No. You can rap as good as Black Thought. You can't rap better.
No.
You can rap as good as Eminem. You can't rap better. You can rap as good as Andre 3000. You can't rap better. So rapping great is no longer like the thing that you have to do in order to be heard. So yeah, in a sense, I think you're right. I never really thought about that parallel to back then, but I think that's pretty accurate.
Was you interview Flash and he talks about Blondie, and she does a rap. Was there? I didn't see it, and you know, it wasn't talked about in the interview. But was there a sense when she did the rap that it was too easy as another kind of same comparison as a Rodney Dangerfield, or was that?
Well, it was interesting getting people's perspectives on it because like I was probably not born at the time that song came out, but it's interesting getting people's perspective on it because what it seems like that was less of what you're describing and more like a really cool moment where hip hop came into the mainstream a little bit. Mm-hmm. It got a certain level of exposure, and the song to a lot of the people we talked to was like a tribute, to rap music and the product of hip hop coming downtown and commingling with the punk scene and the new wave scene and everything. So everyone we talked to seemed to suggest it was like a tribute and a really cool moment, and less like what it might sound like to us now,
right?
Which is just like not great rap.
As I want to, of course, talk about your music, but when you talk to Grandmaster Caz, you also talk to Kane, Kumo D. Kane talks about how he ripped up his pad because he's like, I'm doing, what the fuck am I doing here? That type of.
Yeah.
And we talk about, our comedians talk about comedians. Through this journey for you, has there been like one common MC?
Oh, that's cool. One guy that comes up a lot. That's a great question. I mean, it's a lot of the same names tend to come up. You know what I mean? These guys like Rakim or Nas that really changed the game. Kane comes up a lot. Kaz comes up a lot. Melly Mel comes up a lot. A name that maybe not everybody talks about as much anymore is Slick Rick. Oh God, yeah. Huge influence. I think we tried to line up an interview with him, but we didn't get it. But everyone from Jay-Z to Andre 3000 to you name it, they cite Slick Rick as like a huge influence. The storytelling, the swagger, the humor. I think he's what would I call him? On the tree of MCs, he's one of those main first branches, right? And people branch off from him. So he's an MC's MC for sure. That's come up a lot in interviews.
Yeah, Joel Ortiz has a great line in his song Hip Hop, and then its line is "Slick talk to the track. Who brought that to the game?" And you're like, yeah, good point.
Exactly.
You on the Strombo show, you did a cover of De La Soul Stakes is High, but with your own lyrics. What has been De La Soul's impact on you as an artist? But then the bigger picture, what has been their impact on hip hop music and hip hop culture?
Yeah. Well, their impact on me, again, like I'm not young, but I'm younger than, maybe some of their fans that were around when they put out their first 3 albums. So I really actually encountered them with Stakes is High. And the impact of that album on me was like, it was one of my first times hearing a certain level of lyricism. I didn't know people could do that with lyrics. Some of the wordplay in there, trying to think of on Stakes is High specifically, but he says something like, neighborhoods are now hoods because nobody's neighbors. And he goes on. There's so much great wordplay and describing a situation really poignantly. So as a 15, 16-year-old just that grew up watching music videos, and I love it all, it's all fun, and Michael Jackson black or white video, it's all cool. But then, you see a video and you're like, wow,
yeah,
they're saying something special. So that was part of the impact on me. And then going back and learning about what they represented and their aesthetic. And so for a kid like me that didn't necessarily relate to what else was popular at the time in hip hop, like maybe Wu-Tang or DMX or something, didn't feel like that's who I was. Artists like that meant a lot to me. So I'd say in those 2 ways, De La Soul is very influential on me. And I would say in those same ways on hip hop, they're very hip hop and very great, but just kind of broadened the picture of what hip hop could be.
During an interview, you were talking about lyrics and writing lyrics for albums. And you said you wait for a lyrical idea that surprises you before writing. What does that mean? And
Yeah.
where are you when this? Is there a place that you're driving? You're I don't know, walking around that this hits you. How does this work?
Yeah. Well, you write?
I've been trying to write a lyric since college, and have been failing.
Do you write?
lovely.
Do you write other things or?
I mean, like basic, like just write to write, nothing like. But also the same thing of questions or interview questions or stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I mean by something that surprises me, I'm just asking because maybe you relate to this, but like, I guess I'm always looking for something that feels like better than me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Surprise is a big part of entertainment. And so if something surprises me, I think it can surprise somebody else. If it's something that I feel like, it's weird to say this about yourself, but if it's something I feel like, oh, I could have come up with that. It's weird. Like I'm still coming up with something,
right.
But if it doesn't feel like that's something I would ordinarily come up with, then it feels like it can be surprising to a listener. So that's what I'm like looking for, and that tends to happen oftentimes like in the shower or something, or like in a sort of deeper level of meditation and kind of like deliberate thinking, thought, meditation, prayer, like just deeper posture of thought. Either or the complete opposite, like I'm not thinking actually.
Right.
Those are the two situations that generally produce those kinds of ideas for me. And I think the common denominator is there's situations where I'm not thinking about myself.
Right.
That's what I think is the common denominator. I'm just not self-conscious.
I think Bill Withers said, I heard him doing an interview and they asked him about a song and he said, how'd you come up with it? And he was like, I don't know, walking around, taking a shower. And you're like, oh okay.
Yeah. And you can't write a Bill Withers song.
No.
You can't think about it and do it. Like, come on. You can't write Lean On Me.
No.
Not in a million years you can't write that song.
No. Incredible. I want to go to some of your earlier work. The Old Prince That Lives at Home.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the idea being is that you can't afford this instrumental, right? What has been the blessing and the curse of not being able to, quote unquote, afford that kind of poppy, I don't know, $1 million instrumental?
Yeah.
What for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. For me, well, what I've discovered about myself is that even if I had, like, I don't think I'm capable of achieving like pristine sound. Like it's just not me. Like if people can't see me, but like I can't. Like if I were to put on a suit right now, it would just look frumpy somehow really quickly as soon as it touches me. Like it doesn't care. I don't care if it's tailored $10,000 suit. It's gonna look horrible. Not horrible, but it's gonna feel like me,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's the same way with my music. It's always gonna feel that way. And so you kind of end up where you end up where you fit in, I think, to some extent. Like, I gravitate towards sounds that are a little bit old, a little bit textured, and so it just works for me. I don't think a cleaner, higher quality sound would even work for me.
On the same album, Nowadays You Spit, and I'm going to totally mess this up, so if you want to just come in and go right ahead.
Cool.
And you need more than beats for a dope track, even with more hooks in the coat rack and more hotlines and 1-800 phones. That's why most cats in this rap game just don't last.
Mm-hmm.
It's not vocab they need, it's gonads and backbone so they can speak and not hold back.
Mm-hmm.
That was written in 2007.
Yeah.
How relevant is that lyric now?
Mm.
And how is having a kind of a pop one hit in hip hop, how does that help and how does that hurt the culture?
Yeah. Well, one thing actually I've learned from this series is actually the importance of a hit, like the importance of connecting in a big way. Like when we talked with De La Soul about Me, Myself, and I, and how, that is the biggest song in their catalog. It's a song that introduced them and their amazing creativity to a lot of people. So there is definitely a place for that. At the same time, I think the reason why they're still performing to this day is not because of that song. The reason they're still performing to this day is because they were great and they were on about something and they represented something. So I still believe in that. I still believe in, even in this era now of like metrics on everything. Metrics don't calculate the depth of your impact. You can have 1 million listens to a song, but did it touch 1 million people? Might not have actually touched 1 million people. Or you can have 10,000 listens and you touched 8,000 of those people were touched profoundly by what you said or by the sound, So I still believe in that. Yeah, because there's been songs like that in my life where I saw the video once when I was 10, and I'm a fan of that artist to this day because it actually impacted me,
Hard to Be Black and Not a Hard MC. You spit on What We All Want off the old Prince album. Can you talk about that lyric when you wrote it in 2007, but also how has race played a factor in your lyrical content as an artist?
Yeah, that line definitely touching on stereotypes and marketability and these sorts of things. Well, that's changed quite a bit in hip hop, the boundaries on what a rapper has to be has expanded hugely. I mean, for the biggest rapper in the world is Drake. Right. And that's when Drake started circa 07, like there were huge questions about his credibility. And now that's not a thing that ever comes up, So the genre has grown, I think since then. Not that there aren't still issues of representation and equality in the music and outside of the music, but I do think that what a rapper can be now is, I mean, some people would say it's almost too broad, the definition. Yeah.
We obviously talked about this Hip Hop Evolution series, but you dropped a new album, Short Story About a War. How has or maybe it's the same, but how has your approach become same or different for a new album with all you've learned from this kind of journey for you with Hip Hop Evolution?
Yeah. Well, in a couple ways. I mean, mainly indirectly, to be honest. Like, I haven't learned so many like lessons, like just talking to Busta Rhymes or something, and just like learned about how to make a song better or something like that. But I guess what I took from it was like inspiration, for one thing. You're just from talking to incredible artists about incredible albums. Like I felt inspired all the time. But I actually think the biggest impact was indirect. Like just the fact of, because the last year and a half, basically, I've been like filming for 2 weeks, then home in the studio recording for 2 weeks. And I actually think just that time away from recording was really helpful. Just getting that perspective and time away from the music. So in indirect ways like that, it's actually like been helpful. There's nothing I like learned that I went to the studio and went, let me try this. Because like, I don't know, Q-Tip did this on Low End Theory or anything like that. But the inspiration just constantly there. Yeah.
So with recording the series, when did the idea for the album hit you, and when do you have time to write anything?
Yeah. Well, the idea for the album came to me maybe like 5 years ago or something, but I didn't think of it as an idea for an album. I just thought of it as this interesting story that popped into my mind that stayed with me, and I just kind of kept thinking about it, and it became this lens through which I saw the world and this perspective that was helping me figure out how to live in the world a little bit. So that's all that was. That happened 5 years ago, popped into my brain. And as far as finding time to write, like I've always felt like the more things I have to do, the more I get done. Mm-hmm. That's always been me. I've always known that about myself.
A review of your album says A Short Story About a War delivers in the most uncomfortable way. How does it feel to hear that as a review? I mean, do you feel your job as an artist is to make people feel kind of uncomfortable?
I think it's definitely not to make people uncomfortable.
Well, not in a uncomfortable, not in a weird way.
Yeah. I mean, like I heard someone say like an artist is supposed to simplify what people have overcomplicated and complicate what people have oversimplified. So in that sense, you're trying to disturb, right? And so I do think that that's accurate. And then also I think that uncomfort, if you look at that in a certain sense, what you're doing is creating, disturbance, surprise. You're pushing people in a certain direction. I think that's all part of the artist's job for sure. So, I think if your intent is to make something a little uncomfortable, which this album is, then that's a good thing. If your intent was to make, like, I don't know, something comforting, then you failed. But yeah, I think I take that as a compliment with this album.
The intro track also talks about how this was a poem.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you turn a poem into a complete album?
Well, that was like kind of tongue-in-cheek isn't the right word, but I just like that idea of being like, this is like a poem or something, but it's not really a poem. It's like a whole. I just like the idea of saying that. But I mean, what it is a little sketch to me. Like, it's just a vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even. I call it a short story about a war, and it does have a bit of a plot, but it's almost more like just a glimpse, an image that I saw in my mind of this other world with all these characters and everything. And so I think when I said it started out with a poem, I think what I mean is this is nothing but a sketch. This is nothing but a glimpse. It's just like a humble little short story, but there's a lot in there. Yeah.
The intro track also talks about, to me, it was a commentary on capitalism and what it teaches kids in terms of order to, to make it big, you have to crush the little guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at commercial hip hop today, and for a while, I think, and you kind of feel like you could have the same commentary that it's a celebration of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you view commercial hip hop this way? But also, has in order to be commercial hip hop, does it have to be this celebration of capitalism? And what has changed in the culture to kind of make it this way? Yeah.
Well, I think that in hip hop, you get this really raw representation of the values of the culture, right? And capitalism, to a great extent, is like competition to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And the stakes are so much higher in certain communities, the communities that produce hip hop. And so, what you end up getting is like a celebration of that survival and what people have had to do to survive. And then with that comes an embrace of like that whole of capitalism, of the of the culture. So you definitely get that in hip hop in the rawest form, unmitigated, unpolished, like just celebration of survival in a capitalist system. It's difficult to challenge those values in hip hop. Some people do it, and some people have done it in really powerful ways. Some people, like, I think the best of Kanye, like, critiques it and celebrates it because he's a product of it, right. And that's always very interesting too. But yeah, absolutely. That song, The Sniper, to me is just a metaphor for precisely that, for what we're taught in our system, which is survival. Survival is based on your ability to climb to a higher position that gives you safety and gives you power. So,
another track, The Revolution / The Establishment. It's two different looks about why and who, and we started wars. You have the revolutionaries and you have the war profiteers, which I think is a kind of an incredible track. And I've played it many times. Why this track now, and kind of how did this idea come to you?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, like, all these characters on this album that are, different factions fighting different groups, they are, to me, first, like, fictional. Like, I saw them first in this fictional world, but they're just clear parallels to our world, right? So to me, that revolution and establishment, those two groups, they are in our world, but they also, to me, represent rationales in our world more than just like actual, like, Lockheed and Martin and a revolutionary group. They are rationales for how we live. Some people to me, what the revolution represents in that song are people that maybe have the right idea, but they've lost track of what they're for, and they're consumed by what they're against. And then the establishment side, to me, that represents people that really believe that the violence that they're doing is in order to maintain order, and is just like being realistic and pragmatic. So that's kind of what that song represents. But like right now in our world with all sorts of conflict and tensions, it's like it's very clearly present. It's very evident in almost literally in our world.
The Fool Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Obviously broken up in 3 different parts, but not on the album, not back to back to back. Why are these broken up in 3 different parts, but also why are they spread out throughout the album?
To me, that's like, so this Fool character on the album, he's like the hope, he's like represents the possibility, this very surprising perspective that in this world of war and world at war, he just doesn't believe that bullets are real, essentially. It's like thinks everyone is just shooting and running for no reason. So the reason why they're spread out to me is because in my experience, that's how hope works. It's not like one moment that stays for a long time, or like clarity. That's not how it works. It's like a glimpse once in a while. And other than that, you're just trying to make your way. You're maybe confused. You're maybe in a cloud. You're maybe in darkness. But that's how, to me, hope and clarity and perspective, it's how they work. You go through an ordinary day and you wake up and like, if you're me, I wake up and I like usually feel pretty bad. And then like, I don't know, I have moments where I feel great. And then at the end, like my wife is like, how's your day? I'm like, it was good. But like I've gone through so many crazy ups and downs and had these moments where I thought life was the most beautiful thing ever, and had moments where I've been like, I'm not sure what the point is of anything, So that's why they're spread out. That just feels like real life to me.
What's up with the water, homie? You know what the water showed me. They want to control the water. You know what the water told me. That life begins in the water. You spit on the Fool Part 2, water. First, is this an ode to Mos Def's New World Order?
No, it's not. It's not. I'm a huge Mos Def fan, but it's not. So that song is another one that, again, I saw it in this fictional world first, this water theme. So it does have literal meaning in our world, like water rights and things. But to me, it's actually a metaphor for everything that is water-like, in the sense that everything that is refreshing or life-giving or source of life. So it's like almost a metaphor for like the spiritual and the more important lasting things of life. Because like I say at the start of that song, they were all at war over land, but the truth is in the water.
Right.
So I think that's a lot like our lives. We get consumed by all this stuff that ultimately is not important. Like the only thing that's important basically is relationships. That's basically the only thing that's really going to make you happy. Right. And we all know that, but then we spend our lives and all of our time consumed with other things.
The second to last track is Get Up, which gives you kind of like it's a hopeful, kind of a call to action track. How does this work within the story, but also what happens now after this track? Yeah.
So to me, the way the album ends, there's one song is called Another Year. And what I wanted to do with that song and towards the end of the album is just like really ground all this stuff in everyday ordinary life. It's like I was talking about, like relationships are the only thing that's really important. The album, this war metaphor for everything we've been talking about, capitalism and rationales for violence and all this stuff. Yes, it's political, but at the end of the day, everything is just relationships and work, and so I wanted to ground all this stuff in this isn't about our political views. This is about how we live every day, and are we living out of fear or are we living out of love? And that's basically it, And then kind of wanted to end it on a triumphant sort of celebratory note, partly because I don't like depressing people, and then also partly because that's at the end of the day my sense of how to live. Yes, this is my view of the world, that it is you could compare it to a war, and that's really dark. But I also believe that you go out and you live every day with as much joy as you can.
If you take this whole album, is there a track on it for you that kind of best represents the purpose of the album? I guess with this, it might be a little hard with this, but maybe one or two tracks.
No, for sure. The first song really introduces, because I do think that like that sniper character and that character's perspective is our default perspective in the world, in our world that we live in. So I do think that one's kind of representative. And I also think that the last song is sort of representative. There's just a few lyrics that I feel like sum up the whole album. You know, I say, I wield weapons. Why? Because I feel threatened. Why? Because they wield weapons. Why? Because they feel threatened. You know, it's just sort of, to me, that's a summation of what I'm talking about, which is how much fear drives our behavior in the world.
You've had a good career so far. Obviously, you just dropped this new album. Do you have for someone who's been trying to write a lyric for 80,000 years and has been failing lovely, do you have a lyric that you've written that kind of is like your, oh shit, can't believe I wrote that lyric type thing, that you kind of look back or you read or you hear and you're like,
You're like, damn, that was good. Trying to think, man. Yeah. There's one I wrote that I said, I say, I'm trying to give life. I'm trying to give life with no midwife to help through the rigors, so I just got to push myself to deliver. I'm like, damn, that's good.
He's host of Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix. His new album's a short story about a war. He's Shad. Thank you so much for joining me on the Live with Tim Monaco. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Is this house a good price compared to others in the area? Are prices going up or down? If I don't make an offer right this very moment, will I miss my chance? These are just some of the questions a home buyer might ask. And these are the sorts of questions an agent who is a Realtor can help answer. Because Realtors have the expertise, data, and access to specialty training to help you navigate the process of buying a home. They provide support, guidance, and have your back every step of the way. That's what Realtors do, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Justin and so good. Thousands of spring deals at your Nordstrom Rack store. Save big today on new arrivals from Kate Spade New York, Nike, Sam Edelman, Free People, and Madewell, starting at only $30. Great brands and great prices on dresses, denim, sandals, designer bags, and more. So rack your look and get first dibs on spring styles you want now from just $30 at your Nordstrom Rack store. What will you find?